This is England. You have to be convinced of the truth before I get convicted. You know, you start thinking, for 6 years, you start thinking different things every day. You know, every day. Imagine, every day. You know, there'll be a time that you say, well, you might as well just end your life. And again, you're thinking that, well, if you end your life, what's going to happen? That'll be it. They're going to get away with this.
In December 2006, Addie was arrested at Heathrow Airport for smuggling cocaine into the United Kingdom. A friend's boyfriend had given Addie the suitcase. He had no idea the drugs were hidden in his luggage handle, but no one believed him. He was sent to the Crown Court, which deals with serious criminal cases, and sentenced to 12 years in prison.
At first, when I got convicted, I tried to ask my solicitor to appeal against the conviction, and the request was sent to Court of Appeal, Royal Court of Appeal, and that was refused, and so which left me with no other means from the Court of Appeal itself.
The Court of Appeal requires applicants to submit a new or newly discovered fact in order to make an appeal. At that time, Addie had nothing new to submit.
The law is very restrictive. You have to have something new, and you're only allowed one chance at appeal. So if you've had your one chance, you have to then go to an organisation called the Criminal Cases Review Commission, which is an independent body, funded partly by government, or mostly by government, and it's set up to review possible miscarriages of justice.
A police investigation proved that the woman who testified against Addie had lied, and it was her boyfriend that planted the drugs in his suitcase. So in 2010, Addie's solicitors made an application to the CCRC. It would take 2 more years before they could look at his case.
And it takes them 3 years to even start the job. It's a difficult situation to be in, but it is accepted they're underfunded, but also it's not just underfunding, it's the structural problem of they have to second guess what the Court of Appeal is doing. They have to consider there's a real possibility the Court of Appeal would overturn a case.
Only 3% of applications to the CCRC make it through to the Court of Appeal. In nearly 20 years, they have referred 591 cases. Nearly 2/3 of those were successful. Addie's case was one of them, and in November 2012, he walked free from prison.
In the beginning, when the CCRC was set up, a lot of people thought, this is fantastic, it's an organisation, it's well funded, and its job is to overturn convictions, not itself, but to refer convictions to be overturned. And it did a very good job in the beginning. But in a way, I suppose you could say it became a victim of its own success, so that because the convictions that had caused problems under the old system were now being overturned, more people were applying, and there was less money going into the organisation.
John Robbins is a journalist who writes about miscarriages of justice. He covered one well-known case where the CCRC failed the person they were supposed to be protecting.
I have in mind Victor Neelan, a man who served 17 years, and a couple of years ago had his conviction quashed on the production of DNA evidence. He served 17 years for attempted rape. The DNA evidence pointed towards another male perpetrator, and he was released after 17 years.
Victor was convicted in 1997 after police asked him to join an identification parade. Only 2 of the 7 witnesses picked him out, but he was convicted anyway. Despite claiming they had lost the results, the police never actually conducted any DNA testing on the victim's clothing. Victor applied to the CCRC twice. Both times, they refused his plea for help. In 2010, Victor's lawyer sent the sample for independent forensic testing. Victor's DNA was not a match. It was only then that the CCRC agreed to look at his case.
For the whole 17 years within the prison setting, the state psychology was trying to enforce upon me that I could not take responsibility. And here we have, on the other hand, the state not accepting its responsibility for wrongdoing that has been done to me. And not only to me, but to the victim in the case. So, it's a complete contradiction. There's no morality behind it. This is the way the state operates in England, and it's wholly unjustified in terms of what it has done to me and what it has done to it. Creates victims, and I want to stress that point, that I have all the necessary evidence to demonstrate that the state creates victims.
Victor is currently living in Spain. He says he can't find any sense of normalcy while remaining in England.
I've lost my then partner. I lost every material thing I ever had. It all was lost. I don't have a future. I have a bleak future. I have people who care about me. But in terms of being able to live a normal life, that's never going to happen, because the nightmare of what happened to me within that prison setting for 17 years can never be forgotten. It's a psychological scar.
The phrase that keeps on coming back to me is grown men cry, because I thought I would never experience that sort of grief outside a death situation, but it's like a bereavement. It's horrendous for them. It ruins their lives, it ruins their reputations, jobs, financially, they're ruined, and every single waking minute of their day they spend thinking about it.
But it isn't just about the mental suffering, it's also about recognition of wrongdoing.
Once a conviction is overturned, there's no declaration of innocence, so the court don't say this person is now innocent. All they say is the conviction was unsafe. So you've got an unsatisfactory set of affairs anyway from that point. So if the government were to genuinely embrace the need to correct the damage caused by wrongful convictions, you would think that they would have compensation schemes set up. So if someone is wrongly convicted, they would be paid compensation. But the reality is, again, the law changed on this some years ago, and now you have to virtually be able to prove your innocence. Now, how can you prove you're innocent?
In an effort to save money, the UK government scrapped one of 2 compensation schemes without warning. Then, in March 2014, a bill was passed to change the existing scheme. Now, victims will only receive compensation if and only if the new or newly discovered fact shows beyond reasonable doubt that the person did not commit the offence. Although Addy has been free for almost 3 years, he and his solicitor, Susie Labinjo, have been fighting for compensation. But the new bill has made this almost impossible.
It's another kind of punishment, the way I see it, because that stops you from going forward. If somebody is not saying sorry, because it's another way of the government saying sorry.
They have suffered greatly already, and then they're being told, well, yeah, you might be innocent, but you're just not innocent enough in our view. And so that has a very profound effect on them in terms of their ability to move on, because they come out of the Court of Appeal, there's no apology, there's nothing, and then they're told, on top of all that, on top of all the years you've spent, on top of the fact that you don't get an apology for this, you're also being told that we don't think you're innocent enough for compensation, essentially.
Victor left prison with £46 in his pocket. £46. No home to return to, no marketable skills or job prospects, nothing.
It's not just about money, it's about having some kind of financial support, some kind of security in terms of where they live, the proper advice for counselling, because it's always going to be considerable trauma that those kind of cases will involve, and they need to be supported properly. And it's an absolute outrage that we're in a situation, quite a recent new situation, that these people are being denied compensation. And I think most of the public would understand that to be an outrage.
Despite Victor's DNA evidence and the testimony against Addy being completely false, the government have refused their requests for compensation.
For some, it's not necessarily going to be compensation as being the all-important thing, but that is an acknowledgement by the state that something has gone seriously wrong.
But it isn't just extreme cases like Addy and Victor where the system goes seriously wrong. Wrongful convictions happen on a smaller scale every single day. In England and Wales, there are nearly 2,000 successful appeals against criminal conviction each year. While more serious cases are passed on to the Crown Court, The majority of criminal cases take place in what's called the magistrates' court. 3 magistrates, who are members of the public and not legally trained, listen to cases without a jury. But this can sometimes make their rulings unsafe. Wayne Bin Collar was wrongly convicted in a magistrates' court last year. Wayne says he and his wife were having marital problems. He says she wanted a divorce and was told she could only get legal aid if she was a victim of domestic abuse. One evening, she accused Wayne of physically assaulting her.
The magistrate said, on the basis that my wife at the time sounded distressed on the 999 call, which in my mind is, and I'm sure I thought any sensible person's mind, that's always going to be the case because that's how she wanted to sound. So yes, I was wrongfully convicted and I lodged my appeal on that day at the court, again in disbelief, but my solicitor had always said that cases in the magistrates' courts aren't as they should be.
It took Wayne a year to overturn his conviction. Police testimony, Wayne's calm demeanor on the 999 call, and a visa application letter his wife wrote to the Australian government, where she explained Wayne was a great father and husband, all led to his success. But despite this, he is still experiencing devastating effects.
I was in a state, really. I could obviously physically function, still got to work and stuff, but there was times when I'd just start crying on the tube or at work. The thought of losing your kids who you once saw every day of their life sort of thing was, it was heartbreaking. And I did sort of break down a bit. I started picking my eyebrows and eyelashes, I don't know, it's what I do when you get anxious.
His 3 young children were also affected by the conviction.
All 3 initially you could tell was in shell shock from the date of my arrest and not being at the house and seeing them. When I did see them, even the 2-year-old at the time was like, she couldn't speak, but she just looked, I don't know, you could just see something was strange sort of thing, that she felt something. She couldn't tell you that, obviously. And firstly, when I was picking up the kids from school, you'd get dirty looks or whatever, and felt the teachers were speaking to you funny. That's been like quite a long process. I suppose there's always something in the back of people's heads, though, wondering, well, did he do it? Because someone said it, so there is that thought.
The stigma surrounding wrongful convictions makes it almost impossible for victims to ever move forward.
And that's the phrase you hear all the time, clear your name, and it's not as simple as that. The system is capable of reversing a wrongful conviction, but that phrase, clearing your name, is very problematic because you were convicted of a crime, and lots of people say there's no smoke without fire.
But the public's attitude will never change until the legal system allows its own victims to achieve justice.
I can only talk about my own experience of the criminal justice system. From the beginning to the end, from when I was convicted till now. You imagine that this thing will never happen in a developed country like this, but it's happening. Yeah, it's happening. It's definitely happening.